Lazarevich, that guy's awesome, Lazarevich, he's a Theolite. Lazarevich, analyze his books, he is awesome. Go watch his video.
What's up, Theolites? Welcome to the beginning of the 12th Night unit. I'm really excited to begin this, but before I can go into all of that amazing analysis, I have three things that I need to say. First of all, here's my 12th Night book. But what I really want to say is this. I will not be making any videos about Shakespeare, and the reason why is because of the whole concept of this channel. This channel is called Theoretical Literaturist because it encourages theory. But if I was to make a video about just Shakespeare's life, well, that's all summary. This is all about analysis and theory, not summary. Summary is ridiculous, and honestly, just watch TED Ed Talks. That's a lot better. Number two, please read before you watch these videos. And the reason why I say that you should read is because, well, you won't understand any of what I'm saying. Don't watch these videos and then read. This is not a Spark Notes thing. No, this is hardcore analysis. In fact, I'm even gonna make a chant to encourage reading. It goes kind of like this. Read the book. 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 That kind of changed into some weird metamorphic creature. But read this book. And number three, get the updated edition Folger Shakespeare Library version of Twelfth Night. Once again, that's the updated edition Folger Shakespeare Library of Twelfth Night. Once again, that's the updated edition Folger Shakespeare Library of Twelfth Night. This edition, because if you get a different edition, then you're going to be like, Lazar, the content that you're covering on your page 8 is not on my page 8. Why are you such a horrible analyzer? And to which I will say, you got the wrong book, bro. You got the wrong book. Now, it is edited by Barbara A. Moat and Paul Werstein. So if you really need to know who it's edited by, it's these people. So now, if you have this book, check if these things match. And if they do, well, you're ready for my course. Now, I would love to just go into page-by-page analysis, but I can't do that until I ask the thought-provoking questions that are going to appear in Scene 1 of Act 1. Because that's the core of this video. So number one, how idealistic is Orsino as a character? What are his character motivations? Okay, these are the questions I'm going to be asking. This is the first question. I'm going to have 10 questions. Yes, 10 questions. Number two, how does Orsino feel about not being able to see Lady Olivia? Number three, how does the music playing depict how Orsino feels? Number four, what are your perceptions of love? Why does it hurt people more than help people? When you're answering this question, look through Orsino's perspective, and then look through your own. Number five, why does Orsino think so highly of Lady Olivia? Number six, which identities are almost invisible and underrepresented in this story, and which ones are more round and complex? If you don't know what the round character is, I'll be talking about that much later, round versus flat. So don't worry, that's all going to be covered in the future of this video. But really, why do you think some identities are more invisible? Why? That's a big question that I always want you to ask yourself. Why? Number seven, how do generals during the time Shakespeare wrote this play have an influence on Orsino's character? Number eight, why does Shakespeare choose to symbolically represent love based on 3 types of organs on the body? And how does this represent love? Number 9, when Orsino talks at the very end, so he makes like a little speech after Valentine says something, why does he reference a self-king? Who is this self-king? Is this the person that Lady Olivia will love? And why do we represent it as a monarch or a king? Why? And number 10, why are flowers important in this story? Like any other love story, why do flowers have such a symbolic and significant meaning? Head over, start analyzing. Let's go. Open your books to the very first page of Act 1, Scene 1. You'll see it's called page 7. You might be asking yourself, why is it page 7? It's literally because the title takes up 6 pages. Well, actually 5, because the notes are on the leftmost side. Here are your notes. Here are the actual lines. I will be referencing the notes as I read the scene because they are very, very helpful. Okay, so everything begins with Orsino giving his first speech. But in order to understand Orsino's speech, we have to look at some of the devices that Shakespeare employs. Shakespeare uses iambic pentameter. It goes kind of like this. Da-da, da-da. So the first syllable is unstressed. The second syllable is stressed. This is an iamb. Now, why is it called a pentameter? Well, because penta means 5, so there's 5 iambs in one line. If an iamb is 2 syllables, and there are 5 iambs in one line, how many syllables are there in a line? If you said 10, you're actually okay at algebra 1. If you didn't say 10, then you should learn your times tables and stop watching this video. Okay. I'm sorry for saying that, but it's the truth. Now, Orsino's speech uses this rhyme scheme. And you might be asking, Lazar, I don't care about analyzing the speech. Well, you are going to, because it's probably going to appear on a test. They do want you to know this whole rhyme scheme thing. So let's look at the first line. And it goes like this. If music be the food of love, play on. Now, how does iambic pentameter work here? Well, you see, if music be the food of love, play on, that line has 10 syllables. So how would we say it if we were being a poet? Well, we would say it using iambic pentameter, stressing the second syllable in the foot. So it'd go a little bit like this. If music be the food of love, play on. So if you're confused about how to do unstressed and stressed, what I do is I jolt my head up. So I say, so just do it like this. If music be the food of love, play on. So you see, as I go up, more emotion comes out. As I go down, it's more subtle, more quiet. So just practice that so you can read like a poet does. Now, this play is set in ancient times. And you can tell because Illyria is an ancient country in southern Europe on the Adriatic Sea. Now, the question is, why does Shakespeare choose to use a setting? Setting is a very important part of a book because the whole purpose of a setting is essentially to show who the author is. The author's personality, their character, is displayed through their setting. For example, in John Steinbeck's East of Eden, the nature in the beginning just symbolizes more about Steinbeck's personality, how much he loved nature. Well, here it's very similar. Or at least, in theory, it is. If it's set in ancient times, the reason why Shakespeare does this is because he was an Elizabethan. This was right after the time of the Middle Ages. Yes, I know my history very well. Thank you very much. But you see, after the time of the Middle Ages, people were very Renaissance-y. I don't know a different way to say that, but they were very into the Renaissance. And the Renaissance, or the Renaissance we say here, in the Renaissance, the Greeks and the Romans were the most important people. Because we were honoring these people, we were paying homage to the Greeks and the Romans. And I think this is Shakespeare's way of saying how much he really loves the Greeks and the Romans, because they were the founders of theater, and Shakespeare, he kind of used their ideas to create his own version of theater, Shakespearean theater, which is part of Elizabethan theater. He uses a lot of what they used, and that's why he's paying homage to theater, because he cares about plays, and he wants to make a reference, I think, to plays. So, it's set in the ancient times, and what I like about this is that it does also reference Shakespeare's life. Shakespeare studied a lot of Roman and Greek literature when he was writing his plays. So he probably is going to make references to them by setting his plays there, and he's going to even make allusions, which is seen on page 9. But anyways, let's continue and see what the heck is Orsino talking about. Now, why is music compared to the food of love? This is a metaphor that Shakespeare uses. And Shakespeare uses this metaphor because music has these enticing and pleasing qualities to it. It's melodic. It has a beat, a rhythm. So does love. Love, you might love someone very much, and then that feeling goes away. You want your feeling of love to be satisfied, so that you no longer feel it. It's something that your heart continues feeling, and it beats and it beats and it beats. And Orsino is lovesick. Let's just say that. Very lovesick. And this is the first question. How idealistic is Orsino as a character? And honestly, he's quite idealistic. He thinks that love can just come to his doorstep. He really just has to be with love. He's obsessed with it. He needs love, and he's amazed when he can't get it. Perhaps because of his power in society. This is seen in scene 2. He is, I believe, a king of Illyria. Or, not a king, but, he is rather a duke of Illyria. But basically, that's the exact same thing. So, I think just because of that social hierarchy, he's almost amazed that why is he not getting that love that he feels like he deserves? Now, he says that he wants excess of it. And the reason why is because he doesn't want to have that feeling. Of course, the third line is a little bit weird. If you analyze that third line, you are going to be a bit shocked. But let me just analyze it for you. He says, "Give me excess of it that's so fading, the appetite may sicken and so die." And what that means is that he only wants to have that feeling of love so he can be sexually aroused. Because die means to experience a sexual orgasm. Oh god. This is a bit of a weird thing. He wants to be really sexually aroused by the thought of love, and that's the whole part. So I don't think he really cares that much about Lady Olivia as a person. He just needs love to fulfill him as a person. And that just kind of speaks to his obsession with love. Continuing on, we're going to skip that part, pretend that doesn't actually exist, because that was a bit weird. He says something about that strain again, It had a dying fall. Now, what does that mean? Strain. Well, pretty sure it means that feeling, right? But what he really is talking about is that the music is symbolic to how he feels. You see, when the music decreases, his feeling of love starts to subside. You see, when he reaches that climax of sexual arousal, then everything is a little bit better. Or so I think. Because fall is a cadence, a sequence of chords ending the strain of music. Essentially, it probably indicates also the depression in his life. Strain is going down to lows. The lows in the music symbolize how sad he feels. So, if you're wondering why the music is even there in the first place, well, because music is love. You have the ups, the ejaculation, that sexual arousement, and then the downs. When you're depressed and you're lonely and you are sad because you don't get what you want. Now that answers question 3 about how the music playing depicts how Orsino feels. But how does Orsino feel about not being able to see Lady Olivia? Well, he's quite angry, right? He feels that it's very unfair, and as I mentioned, the social hierarchies, but he's very passionate about it. He goes into a whole speech, and whenever Shakespeare uses iambic pentameter, that means that it is very important. Iambic pentameter is used because it's poetic. Well, it is essentially poetry, but it's poetic, and therefore it highlights something important. Here we're highlighting an importance in who Orsino is as a character. Orsino is chasing after this Lady Olivia. He's obsessed over her. But interestingly enough, Lady Olivia, well, we soon find out she's obsessed over preserving her dead brother. They're both obsessed, and they're both crazy. And when we have crazy characters in a story, let's just say that story's a pretty good story. Shakespeare then talks about violence, stealing and giving odor. The air that breathes upon violence. Okay, this is pretty confusing, but let's try to analyze it. If we say the sweet sound that breathes upon a bank of violets, essentially violets are flowers. They are creatures of love, but they're much different than roses. They're much more purple, and I'm not sure exactly. There probably is some sort of symbolic meaning of violets versus roses, but let's just reference them as flowers, okay? Now, when he talks about the sound going over violets stealing and giving odor, essentially he's talking about, this is Shakespeare when I reference he's referencing how there's some strange feeling that Orsino can't put on, but he also knows that it's basically love ending. You know, when you're in the flowers, everything seems great, but there's something that's in there. The actual flowers themselves. This is kind of the rose and its thorn, right? That sound that comes over, it's basically interrupting what you want. It's basically taking away. Stealing and giving odor. It's basically saying you don't live in paradise. This sound kind of snaps you back to reality, the truths of life, how life is hopeless. You see, odor is characterized as a very bad thing. It's an unpleasant smell. And you would think that when you're in flowers, everything's going to be paradisical. Paradisical, whatever. Same thing. But when you get that stealing odor, something's distracting. Something is an incongruency. So, essentially, an abnormality. A lot of writing is about identifying abnormalities, because when something's an abnormality, when it's not usually supposed to, it means something's wrong. You're just basically him saying something's wrong in an area of rights. Okay? Then he stops the music. And what I think that's interesting is because Shakespeare almost breaks the fourth wall in some way, because he basically almost says how the music, you see, the audience can hear the music. And here, Orsino knows himself that the music is part of a plot device. And therefore, he tells them to stop the music. Not only because, well, he wants them to stop it, but also because the plot device. He no longer can take that depression, that loneliness, that sadness. Essentially, Orsino is aware that he's just a character. This is essentially a thing that they like doing in plays. A play inside of a play, but not really just a play inside of a play, but really where we know that we are in a simulation or a new world and that people are watching us. And this is very authentic to plays. In Cyrano de Bergerac, we literally have a play inside of a play. Here, he knows that this is a plot device and he can't take it anymore. And I find that very interesting because when he says, enough, no more, he's angered by it. He's like, no, I'm better than what you portray me as. Don't give me this description. He's not happy with how Shakespeare characterizes him, yet that's his character. Now, he talks about love as a very bad thing. He says, how quick and fresh art thou? Essentially, it takes and it takes and it takes and it never gives. Or maybe it seemingly gives like the flowers do, but that odor is a taking part. Basically, the whole odor thing was a taking of love. How it devours. And what's interesting about that is that he is trying to say how sometimes love hurts more than it helps. And this is my question to you about the perceptions of love. This is number 4. See, I'm getting to the old questions. Why do you think it would hurt more than help? It's basically because the lovesickness that you can feel by not getting love is a lot worse than having love itself. How lovesick you can be without love is so tremendously horrible that it can basically damage people's character. People can no longer live. And this is why, honestly, love is probably more damaging than helping. And as we continue, we are going to see that notwithstanding thy capacity receiveth as the sea not enters there. That's right here. It says something about notwithstanding thy capacity. And what this is trying to say is nobody enters into this sea. And I guess the sea is considered always a metaphor for love. I don't even know. I think it's mostly because you just keep on traveling and you kind of fall into this whole, you get consumed by it. He gets consumed by the love. And nobody really enters there. Nobody can it's hard to say, but I guess nobody can get the good things, the things that are worth, because validity and pitch is worth and excellence. And nobody can get that excellence that's over. Indicating perhaps that love is just, well, it's not the top, it's the very bottom. Basically, he's very angry, and he's saying, we fall into abatement and low price, not the peak, but the bottom. No one enters there at the peak. We just keep on getting consumed, and go down. Think about it like a submarine. You're just continuing to get down, and you're going more and more, exploring more and more depths, until you get into this whirlpool of love. It's similar to Ring of Fire by Johnny Cash, where he says, I fell into the burning ring of fire, oh, and the flames went higher. He's so consumed by love that he almost burns because of it. So I'll just say, my friends, don't love too much. Or at least don't love how Shakespeare loves. Or how writing loves. Just try to be a little bit more okay with not having love. That's the main lesson that I think they should try to teach you. But now we get into the excellent wordplay at the very end of Orsino's speech. Orsino talks about, so full of shapes is fancy that it alone is high fantastical. So what does that exactly mean? And what it means is that essentially he may be imagining some of the things of lovesickness, because fancy means love. So he's very consumed by love, but since it also means highly imaginative, he's playing with the double meanings, and this says in the notes, to describe the intensity of his lovesickness. So what does that mean? Why would imagination lead to more lovesickness? And the reason why imagination leads to more lovesickness is because he's imagining more about how much love harms him, and therefore he's extending his lovesickness. He really doesn't have to be this lovesick, but he imagines so much that it becomes that. So basically, because he's so passionate, he actually diverges into this mess. So passionate is not necessarily good. That double meaning, how something that's passion usually is described as a good thing to have. Well, it can lead to imagination. And imagination, that just envelops you in a whirlpool of thoughts. There's that word again, whirlpool. The self-perpetuating core. Everything revolves around everything. And that feeling of speed kind of describes how we feel about our own lives. Okay. Enough about that. I was talking about round and flat characters, if I am not mistaken. I was saying which identities are round, which identities are flat. So this goes into Curio and Valentine. So flat characters are characters that don't develop that much in the story. Round characters are characters that have significant character development usually. And the reason why some characters are more round than flat are to portray, during Shakespeare's time, the social hierarchies. So we'll find that Orsino is a more round character. There's a lot to go with him. There's a whole poem about him. Meanwhile, we have Curio, and Curio's not at all a round character. He speaks in one line, and the line that we first hear him speak in, he says, "Will you go hunt, my lord?" So, my lord, that indicates that he's more of a servant position, and that Orsino is of a higher position. He is, of course, the Duke of Illyria. But this just indicates how servants are very undervalued. They're mostly spurned by the society, and therefore people of lower class, they're not seen to have as much importance. And therefore, Shakespeare doesn't portray them as important, because that's literally what society thought during the time. During the Elizabethan era, I mean, this is all the way until the Victorian era, there was a huge idea of that royalties. And remember, they just got out of chivalry. And during the chivalrous times of the Middle Ages, oh boy, there was everything was social class. This was very similar, a little bit lessened, but still, servants were very unimportant, and therefore they are portrayed in the unimportant way that he does. Meanwhile, Orsino is very important. Same with Lady Olivia. But Valentine, on the other hand, just a message deliverer. And my lord, my lord, my lord. Now, the whole idea of saying my lord is just to indicate that, right, social hierarchy. But remember, look for those words to see how some people treat others as if they're higher than them, as if they have a higher respect, as if they deserve to be more. And just think about, okay, what about that whole idea of everyone being born equal and free? How is now the current Declaration of Independence, not the Declaration of Independence, but the Constitution of the United States, how that's didn't really exist back then. So we just compare and contrast our times with past times. Okay. Now, he says, what do I hunt? The hart. Hart is a stag. A stag is essentially a hunting animal. And this is funny because, you would think that he's hunting the hart, but he's also hunting his own heart. He's trying to find the heart. And he actually uses a metaphor indicating how knowledgeable he is of the time, kind of satirizing the whole, idea of people during this time because people were very unintellectual. Yet you can see here, Orsino knows a lot about that, and he can make this metaphor to a heart, which is later seen in page 9. Well, my friends, that is page 7 analyzed for you. Let's continue over to page 9. Okay, now we are going to begin our analysis of page 9. Yes, page 9. So open your text to page 9, and let's see what it says. Okay? So what he talks about, and we begin with this allusion to Greek mythology. Now, before I get into this allusion, I just wanted to say something that I found really interesting. The country Illyria, which is referenced here, I said before that it was a reference to, Greek mythology that Shakespeare probably read Greek and Roman literature because he probably studied Greek and Roman literature. But interestingly enough, Illyria is a country that currently the Balkans reside in. So the Balkans were under, I think, the Roman Empire, and so maybe there's an influence because of that. So there's still an influence because of that, but it's not exactly a part of Rome or a part of Greece. It's actually a whole different area. So that's a really interesting thing, because you would expect, Shakespeare to do something very Western. And of course, the Balkans are a little bit less Western. I think when we think about the Balkans, we think about them as some part of Russia, like Serbia. Some people confuse with Siberia. So I think that's how ancient times have changed to modern times. But yeah, they were definitely under the influence of the West during that time. Greek influence, right? We have the whole Roman Empire whole thing, and so that's part of it. He probably studied the Roman Empire, and he knew that this was a big thing at the time, and since the Roman Empire and everything about that influenced him, he decided to situate it in Illyria. Okay, back to page 9. So he makes an allusion to the Metamorphosis. It's just a huge epic poem that Ovid wrote. Ovid is this playwright. Or I don't know if he's a playwright, but he's a very famous person during the time. And Shakespeare was very influenced by Ovid. Fun fact, according to a Wikipedia article that I read, yes, I know this is not the best reputable source, but you will see that a lot of Shakespeare's pieces are exactly based off of Ovid. For example, Titus Andronicus is, I think, some parts of it are copied straight off of Ovid's Metamorphosis. And also, I think in Julius Caesar, there are some Ovid references. And Tempest, I believe? I am not exactly sure. You can just check that out yourself. But Shakespeare was really influenced by Ovid's Metamorphosis. And once again, this was because he's paying homage probably to the Greek theater and the Roman theater. And, Ovid was a huge, I think he was a Roman person, but he was paying homage to those theaters because they helped inspire him. And that's why he makes that reference to Ovid's Metamorphosis instead of like a religious reference. We might see a lot of biblical references in Victorian literature, and that's because the church was clashing with science, and therefore there's a lot of Bible in this. Well, during this time, this was after the Renaissance, and therefore there's a lot of Greek and Roman references, okay? So it's always based on the time era you're in, what references you're going to make, okay? And here we see Shakespeare not making reference to the Bible, but rather to the Greek and Roman literature. And what's interesting is you can say, okay, is mythology religious? And it probably is, but I think it's definitely a little bit less religious, and not many people worship it. There's no fundamentalists, because very few people are worshippers of the Greek religion. So I think this is much more rooted in fiction, while the Bible, we root this a lot more in reality. But in my opinion, they're both fiction. But let's not get into that. Okay, so when he makes that reference to he was turned into a hart, and my desires like felon cruel hounds ever since pursue me, what he's trying to say is that basically, when he says that he was turned into a hart, this means, this is the reference to that illusion, and what it means is that he's basically, it's hard to put this in words, but what I'm trying to say is he finds it very unfair. he finds it very unfair that ever since he's tried to pursue his love for Lady Olivia, that he has no choice. Essentially, he finds it very unfair, and the reason why he finds it so unfair is looking at this illusion. What it references to is how Orsino, not Orsino, but Actaeon, he was turned into a heart. And so essentially, this was unfair for him because he just accidentally stumbled upon Diana bathing. Diana was, of course, not supposed to be seen bathing, and therefore he was turned into a stag, and because he was turned into a stag, then he died because of his own hounds. And essentially, he's saying that he doesn't feel this is considered very unfair because he didn't do this on purpose. It was very accidental. It was more of something that fate intervened. And here he's making that exact same reference to himself. It was an accident that he kind of stumbled into this feeling, this beauty for her, and because he believes that she can cleanse the earth, and because she is the perfect person, he has to pay an unfair cost, being that he has to chase after his own love for her. Essentially, his desires for love only are going to become higher and higher as she resists, just like Diana kind of resisted him by turning him into a hart, which is a stag, a deer. Essentially, you get what I'm trying to say, right? He's turned into a hart, and it's pursuing him, and he finds it unfair, and he doesn't want this life to be this way. He doesn't want to feel this lovesick. He doesn't want to be in this position, but he is, just because she feels like her perfectness has allowed that. Okay, continuing on, we are going on to Valentine, and Valentine gives news, and we realize that when Valentine speaks in the beginning, there's no iambic pentameter, but after that, there's a lot of iambic pentameter. And the reason why Shakespeare uses iambic pentameter after that is because, once again, to highlight the importance of these bigger figures in society. So bigger figures in society have iambic pentameter while others don't. Once again, this indicates that social hierarchy. Okay. And continuing on, we see that Valentine says how the element itself till 7 years heat shall not behold her face at ample view, but like a cloistress she will veiled walk. So these three lines from 28 to 30. Just read those lines. And what I want you to see in those lines is, interestingly enough, it indicates how Lady Olivia is almost invisible. This is one of those invisible characters at this point, in number 6. Well, it's very visible in Orsino's mind, but she walks invisibly. Now, Shakespeare adds suspense by portraying her as an invisible character, because we're wondering, okay, what's hiding below that invisible cover that we see? It's a huge thing. And also, what I want you to realize is, why is she invisible? And she's invisible, of course, to make him yearn more for that love, and so he will get into that feeling of obsession. Remember, when we have a lot of obsession, we have good conflict, good story. Now, this is an interesting thing that I want to point out. Let me just get my marker. So, Orsino, he likes Lady Olivia. He wants Lady Olivia to love him. Lady Olivia, she loves her dead brother. No, not in the same way. She loves him more in a family way. So what that means is that she doesn't love him like truly, like romantically. It's all instead, I'm looking for the right word. I don't know what the right word is, but you know what the right word is. So yeah, that kind of love, right? It's strictly platonic. That's what I was going to say. It's a strictly platonic kind of love. But because, it's interestingly enough, Orsino does not like her dead brother, right? Because, she doesn't feel like it's fair that the dead brother, because the dead brother died, he's not able to see Lady Olivia, and therefore he's not able to have his own appetite for love satisfied. And therefore this guy, Orsino, he hates the dead brother. But interestingly enough, well, if Lady Olivia would ever find out that he hates the dead brother, and that he finds that it's unfair that he can't love because of the dead brother, well, since Olivia loves the dead brother so much, I mean, she would say, okay, I'm sorry, there's no way I can love you. This is funny, because now, what Orsino is probably going to have to do is he's going to have to appear, whenever he approaches Lady Olivia, if he wants her to love him, he has to say something, just great things about the dead brother, right? Because she literally is not going to see anyone for 7 years just because she wants to preserve the memory of the dead brother. And I find that really interesting, because now Orsino's in a very complicated situation. And it's so ironic that he's going to have to do this, because he hates the dead brother. The dead brother is causing this love sickness to just come out in him. And so the irony is definitely going to be part of the comedy of the story. Or what I am just predicting. Okay, so we continue on, and it says, I offending brine. What does that mean? It means that, number one, this is also really well wordplay. Brine is to preserve something. So essentially, her tears are preserving his memory. The memory lives in the tears. In her sadness, she will remember him. And this is kind of depressing. This is like, okay, I'm just hanging on to something and I can't let go. She's just hanging on to this balloon. Just like Orsino is hanging on to this balloon of Lady Olivia. And they can't let go, both of them. Because, well, Orsino can't let go because of his love sickness. I mean, let's be honest, I don't think Lady Olivia is probably loving Orsino. There's a very unlikely chance. Or maybe it's possible. But I feel like he's hanging on to something that is supposed to be gone. Because she's not going to see anyone for 7 years. So that balloon is supposed to float away, but he's still hanging on. Just like Lady Olivia is hanging on to her dead brother with the balloon because, well, the dead brother's dead and you probably should let go. They both should let go, but they don't. Indicating that they're very obsessive. So that's a huge character trait that I want you to pinpoint. Now, continuing on. So basically, I talked about the brine, how it's preserving it. It's wordplay. Shakespeare loves using wordplay. But why does he say, I offending? This is a good question. Well, he says, I offending because the tears are so dramatic, right? It's almost like you can't see it. We don't want to see your tears. They would offend our eyes to see them. And quite frankly, she is not going to be seen for the next 7 years. Which is kind of funny because it's that eye offending that we can't see it. But of course, it's not because of that reason. She just wants to cry with her own piece. But of course, if we were to see the tears, we would expect them to be quite huge. Okay. But also, I'm going to just finish off Valentine's little quotation. Okay. Also, we see that 7 years is the number. And I think 7 is symbolic because there is a proverb that says a broken mirror is 7 years of bad luck. And this is very theoretical. But if we use the number 7 here, I think, personally, that number 7 is very symbolic. Essentially, we need those 7 years of bad luck to pass so that everything can be good again. Because if she doesn't wait those 7 years, she'll feel like she's not caring for her brother enough. And once again, this could be a reference to that because that whole 7 years of bad luck, that comes from old superstition, which may or may not be centered on Roman or Greek things. I will look that up later and get back to you. I think it is, though. So that's why I think it's a reference to that. Shakespeare saying, oh, look at me, I'm very fancy with my number 7. Because why else would you use number 7? It's, I need to live that bad luck so that everything can be good again. Very superstitious thing. Shakespeare does that also in Julius Caesar. The Ides of March. Beware of the Ides of March. He makes that whole idea of superstition known. And I think that's a huge part of Shakespeare in writing, and therefore 7 is very symbolic. Continuing on, Orsino finishes off with his last speech. And I think here we're looking at Orsino, and we're going to continue with essentially how do generals during the time Shakespeare wrote the play have an influence on Orsino's character. Well, what has an influence, I believe, is he treats not Valentine, but Lady Olivia as a very fragile character, and many women were treated as fragile creatures back then, and they are not creatures, and we should not do that. That's a big stereotype that we should try to avoid. But I do think that Orsino kind of falls into that stereotype of treating women as fragile creatures, because he's like, oh God, what will happen if when she finds about true love, she won't bear it. This will be too much for her. This is this idea that women can't stand this much emotion, this much stuff in their lives. They are very fragile creatures, and anything that's too much can hurt them, and that it can damage them. And that's essentially what Orsino's saying. He says, "How will she love when the rich golden shaft hath killed the flock of all affections else that live in her? When liver, brain, and heart, those sovereign thrones are all supplied and filled, her sweet perfections with one self-king." Right? So essentially, she can't live when there is going to be true love because, well, she's already grieving for her brother, and he thinks that love is more important than family, which it doesn't have to be. And I think that's also, he is not viewing her as a human with human needs. He doesn't realize the importance of family. He's like, love is everything. So he's definitely a hopeless romantic. If we're going to characterize Orsino, he's a hopeless romantic, and he thinks that love is the biggest thing ever. And so he disregards what a brother could be. And a brother is a very important figure. We can say that family is a lot more important than love, because family, we've been with them for our entire life, while our love is just a little desire or an impulse in our brain. And so therefore Orsino is not mindful at all, and he's not an aware character. And I think that's why he's definitely disregarding some of the things that Lady Olivia has. And so that's just the flaws of the characters, right? Character flaws, character imperfections. They show that the hero, he's probably a hero, they have their own weaknesses. And this is just general characterization for you. Okay, so number 8, why does Shakespeare choose to symbolically represent love based on 3 types of organs in the body? Number 1, it's because he wants to appeal to the senses of the reader. Remember, by characterizing them as organs, we give that visual aspect of the body. He uses science. But not only that, but he also does this because these represent essentially what is love. Remember, liver is the seat of passions, brain is the seat of reason, and heart is the seat of feeling. So you might be asking, when do I need to use all of those for love? And I will tell you exactly right now when you need to. So, for example, if I'm talking about reason, which is exactly brain, it's the decisions that you make as you love. So, for example, if you're too impulsive, it can hurt your relationship. So the reason is making smart decisions so you can love the person without them falling out of your hands. Passion is definitely the part of liver, and this is more the impulsive side. So I think that the liver contradicts the brain, but the passion is essentially saying, what do we want to do? What do we want to feel? Essentially, this is just going to crazy lengths to show love, but at least doing them in, of course, smart manner and doing them so that they don't fall out of your hands. So definitely that's managing the liver and the brain is a complex part about love. And lastly, heart is the seat of feeling. Feeling is just having that emotion that you're in love. So by accomplishing reason and passion, that after that, as you have a lot of passion, but also you make smart decisions so that the passion doesn't get too much, well then you can get that perfect love, and when you feel the love, that's the feeling. And there are why we represent it with those three organs. Because those three organs mean what they mean, which you can see in page 8. And, well, they mean that because of what I just said. Thank you very much. Okay, let's finish it off. Who is that self-king? Her sweet perfection. The self-king is considered a man that's supposed to satisfy all her desires. And this is, of course, stupid to think that every woman is in need of a man. That's definitely representative of the gender roles. By characterizing it as a king, as a monarch, it indicates that men were considered more higher on the hierarchical scale than women were. So that's, of course, gender roles during the time. That's only my own opinion. I'm not exactly sure if that's what it means, but I'm pretty sure it is because, well, we literally say the golden shaft, which is when one person falls in love with another person, and that king is usually a man, so, yeah. Anyways, that finishes that. Why are flowers important in this story? Well, flowers are important in this story because flowers have the roses of their thorns, the good and bad about love. And I think why they love using flowers ever is because they offer shade. Right? Whenever you go into a field of flowers, it's shady. And this is like love thoughts lie rich and canopy with bowers. And everything's very shady and peaceful, and you kind of are interacting with nature. And nature is the core of who we are as human beings. And therefore, characterize nature and love very similar because we feel like very connected to nature, and that's similar to love, and that's why nature and love get put in similar viewpoints. But what does it exactly mean, canopy with bowers? Well, this essentially means what love is. Remember, bowers are shady places. And why are shady areas examples of love? Well, the reason why is because they're calming. And when they're calming, they're also secretive. They're secluded areas. Whenever something's secluded and you can't see anyone else, then you have more intimacy between the relationship. And more intimacy means more love. It's hidden, it's secretive, and it's exciting. And as always, Theo, thanks for reading.